Welcome to Goldfish on Games, where the blue blur has come back for more. He's also brought a few new tricks, as we check out the 8-bit second outing of Sonic the Hedgehog. And here we have Sonic 2 for both the Game Gear and Master System, as I happen to have a box copy of both, so here they are. Now this was developed by Aspect and published by Sega in 1992, and amazingly this was released a month before the Mega Drive game. The box art hints at a few things that you'll find in the game, but we'll cover those in due time, and while these share the same artwork on the front of the box, they are quite different round the back. Inside the boxes I've got just the cart for the SMS, but I've got everything for the Game Gear. That includes that plastic clamshell for the cart. I do miss these from the Game Boy Game Gear era. I've also got the manual, which as you expect goes over all the basics of the game, but there's no extra artwork this time around. Now I'll be mostly covering the Master System version, as it is a bit easier to capture for. But there will be some Game Gear footage in here as well, to show off the differences. And the first thing you'll see is this nice little intro, with Robotnik flying off with Tails. In this game you don't actually get to play as Miles Powers, but instead you have to rescue him, and this was actually the first time Tails showed up in a game, even if he's not actually playable. But we will get to see lots of him as we go, as he shows up on the title screen, which seems far more detailed and animated than the first game, and while that lovely little map between the acts is gone, we do now get these title cards that more closely resemble the Mega Drive games. Now they all have a bit of art hinting at the stage design as well as showing off Tails. And as we can see, the first stage is Underground Zone. This continues the trend of the first one having mostly new and unique zones as well as having their own ideas when it comes to Sonic. And this zone acts as a good gentle introduction to the game as well as showing off some of the new things that Sonic has learned, or at least picked up from his faster cousin. As rings were made a bit more useful this time around, as when you lose them, you'll actually get a chance to recollect them. Now the numbers that are dropped are far more limited than the 16-bit games, and you have less time to collect them, but it is great that they managed to include it. They were also able to include walls that you can break by rolling through them. Now there's definitely some slowdown when that happens, but overall there's far less than there was before. Now there's one thing you could consider missing, which is the spin dash. Now this was one of the cornerstone features that was added in Sonic 2 on the Mega Drive, which as mentioned was actually released after this, so it didn't show up. But Sonic did get some all new abilities like being able to ride minecarts. Now you don't get direct control over them, it will just take you for a ride, but you can bail out when required, so it is quite cool. As you might have noticed, the level designs also got some improvements, with many of the acts actually having a few different routes. Most of the time this might just mean having an upper and lower path, but it does make it feel a little bit more like Sonic. But because of this, the levels themselves do feel a little bit smaller, as they are faster to complete, which could be why checkpoints were not included in this game. And after being underground, where else can we go but up to the skies, with Sky High Zone being next, which starts you on this nice, bright, sunshining day. And while you might expect there to be lots of bottomless death pits in the sky, instead we get lots of spikes. I guess they just wanted to make sure you were doubly dead. And if you hadn't realised it already, this act makes sure that you know that you can break walls, so you have to do that to continue. And it won't take long before you find this zone's speciality, the hand glider, which I still can't fully control after all these years, but thankfully your first attempt is a short flight to the exit as we leave the blue skies as the rain and thunder comes rolling in. This was the effect that I always imagined for Sky Base Zone in Sonic 1, with the rain and the thunder going on, though it is mostly cosmetic with neither having any real impact on the blue blur. But that wind that does show up is quite useful when you're hand gliding, as you can ride the updrafts to get higher up in the map. But you can typically explore the levels on foot, and you'll need to do that if you want to try and find the Chaos Emerald, as yes, once again, the emeralds are hidden in the second act of each zone. And you will have to go out of your way to find them, as they are really well hidden. And some of them will only give you a single chance to get them as well. Mess it up, and you're going to have to die to do it again. Which can make continues far more important. And one thing they actually dropped was the bonus stage, and as that was the main way of getting continues in Sonic 1, they moved these to the end of level signpost, which can actually give you a continue if it happens to land on Tails. And with all this rain, it's not surprising we end up at a water level next, as we reach Aqua Lake Zone, where we can see Sonic has actually learned even more new tricks, like skipping across the water, which is a really neat idea as it has the added bonus of meaning you don't have to go under the water, so you can take the upper path and avoid it completely. But if you do go underwater, prepare for lots of checkerboarding, as it uses that trick to make it seem as if you're under the lake. It's not my favourite trick for doing transparencies, and doesn't look all that great here. Thankfully, it's not actually used in all the levels, just the ones where you can go in and out of the water. But if you do take that upper route, this level also marks the first time you'll get to see a loop in the 8-bit games. Now there's not many of them, but they are looking pretty good, and just help again make this feel more like Sonic. But even if you do take that upper route, you can't completely avoid going underwater, as the second act is completely submerged. But we do get these pipes to fly around in, which is quite cool. Now the typical slower movement and having to be on the lookout for air is far less cool, but this time you do actually get some respite as there's these bubbles which you can ride up, which will also top up your oxygen. Being 3 zones in, I think it's time to talk about the boss fights, as you don't actually fight Robotnik. But weirdly, he will actually save you on the first zone. I guess he was desperate for you to take on his mecha animals. The fights themselves are actually quite varied, as you'll have to learn the trick in defeating each of them, as just spin attacking won't work with most. And in some instances you'll have to deal with having multiple parts to the boss fight. Now if you end up playing on the Game Gear, then you'll also have to be careful, as these fights tend to be much harder due to the smaller viewing area. Oh, and like Sonic 1, there's no rings in either version, so you better be perfect. Weirdly, as we go into the next zone, it actually feels like we might be starting afresh, as we are entering the Green Hills zone. A zone that feels familiar, but also different to that classic Green Hill zone. Although I will say the level design is a little bit simpler than what we've seen so far. So it's possible that these were actually meant to be the first levels, but they decided to mix it up in the end, and show off some of the newer features at the beginning. What we'll also see is far more badniks in these levels than we've seen so far, but even then the number isn't particularly huge. And the music on this zone might actually sound a bit familiar, as you can just about hear Toot Toot Sonic Warrior. Now it turns out 2 of the musicians that worked on this were also credited on Sonic CD, so this actually feels like a prototype for that eventual song, and they did pull some great tracks out of the Sega Master System. Now the SMS game was only released in PAL regions, with the Game Gear obviously getting a worldwide release. And while the PAL version of the game will run on an NTSC console, I had noticed some graphical glitches when doing so, as it seems they actually put some effort into this and fixed it up for the European release, with the music playing at the correct tempo. Now Sonic himself still doesn't move as fast as he should do, but it doesn't feel as noticeable when playing, but when you compare it against the Game Gear version, you can spot it pretty quickly. And from the hills, we are now going to the mountain, as we're going to have to scale Gimmick Mountain, which you might not be too surprised to find out has lots and lots of different movement systems for you to play around with. There are these new wheels that you have to spin around and then launch yourself up. There's conveyor belts to traverse, pipes come back, and also will return again later. There are these moving platforms to use, and the minecarts make a return. This will really put all your platforming skills to a real test, which is where the 8-bit Sonics have firmly landed with its skills it expects from the gamer, as there aren't much in the way of badniks for you to deal with as you go around, and most of them are quite easily dispatched with very little effort. It's all about how to travel around the levels. And while the two games didn't share any developers, it seems they did actually get some art from the original team, as the Sonic sprites are near identical between the games, with Sonic's shoes getting touched up and there being a few new frames of animation for those new abilities. But at its core, it's the exact same sprite, which was also used on the Game Gear, where previously they designed brand new sprites for Sonic that were drawn a bit smaller. So the portable Sonic finally gets a nose, even if it is at the expense of having a smaller viewing area. There was also much less changes made between the two versions of the game, with the Game Gear mostly having to deal with the lower resolution, which I think makes it a little bit easier to recommend the Master System version out of the two, even if the Game Gear did actually get a slightly extended intro. If you thought you had your fill of pipe before, then I've got some bad news for you as we enter Scrambled Egg Zone, as this is a vast maze of pipes that you'll have to work through and overcome. And if you hadn't realised it in the previous levels, you do actually have some control over where Sonic goes in the pipes, and you can redirect him at some of the intersections. But you'll have to work out your change of direction quite quickly, as you will fly past them very fast. And with these walking bombs, we finally have a badnik that you have to actually avoid or work around. Rings and the invincibility monitor are your only defences in this game, as the shield was removed. And it seems the power shoes were also removed, even though there is a single monitor that has been left in the game. But it doesn't seem to actually work, and it was even replaced with rings on the Game Gear version. This is the first zone not to have a Chaos Emerald, as you can only get it by beating the boss, Silver Sonic, who actually made an appearance in Sonic Mania. And he might actually be your last boss in the game if you've not collected all the Chaos Emeralds up to this point, as he will give you the last one if you've done that. And if you have been good enough to collect all the emeralds, then you'll manage to enter Crystal Egg Zone, which has some of the most annoying music in the game, and its art style as well isn't great, with some of the puzzles being more about trying to work out which walls are solid and which ones you can walk through. It's not the best level. But if you do manage to complete this, you'll get your final showdown, and this time it will actually be against Robotnik. It has been quite interesting to see how different teams have tried to distill the essence of Sonic, with this attempt being more about trying to recreate the level flow and general feeling of Sonic than the previous. But they did have to drop a number of its features to make it possible. It's still a great game, even if I do find the hand gliding a little bit annoying to control. But I don't find it quite as memorable as Sonic 1, even though they did do a bunch of cool and interesting stuff. And it really does put on a real show, technically with its graphical effects and sonically with its audio. So if you've not checked this one out, I think you should do, as it is quite fun to play even today and has a bunch of its own unique ideas. So until next time, I've been the Goldfish, that was Sonic really flexing the 8-bit systems, and this was Goldfish on Games. Thank you for watching my video. I do hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, you can let me know down in the comments, or you can use those buttons just below. You know the ones I mean. Or if you're not sure yet, then you can check out 2 other videos that I've done that are on the screen right now. So thank you again, and I hope to see you soon.